a stranger with a gun came upon 2 teens taking pictures under a rising full moon. But violence is only the beginning of this story.
Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and I've spent my career talking about how lives are undone by violence. The Letter is a podcast about how lives are remade. Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery. It's brought to you by our friends at useonlyasdirected.org. They got a 3-part solution for the opioid epidemic that is speak out, opt out, and of course, throw out. And backed by popular demand, with or without the cough, it is Dr. Matt. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, much better than last week.
So yesterday, last week you called this, you just got back from a week vacation.
Yeah, we went up to Idaho and had a great week on a lake up there and had a good time.
I saw the pictures. It looks beautiful. Yeah. The kids playing on the paddle boards.
Right.
Sunset.
Catching fish.
Your hair just flowing in the wind. It was. These are postcard pictures that you were sending back.
It was a beautiful place. We had a great time. But when I came back, I was worried that I had picked up COVID.
The corona.
Because I got really sick the day after we got back, and luckily, the day of our last show, I had gotten the results that I do not have COVID, but I was still couldn't talk without coughing, and
you just had one of those wicked summer coughs.
Yeah,
which is really messing with people right now because as soon as you cough or sneeze or have the sniffles, it's automatic.
You worry that you have it. I sort of kind of just wanted to have it and get it over with. To be honest, I was there was a little bit of me that was disappointed when I got the negative. I'm like, oh man, I just want to have it and get it over with.
But you don't have it.
I don't have it.
Hey, let me ask you a question. What kind of program do we run?
We run an honest program, Casey.
Well, I got to talk to you about this.
Uh-oh.
I'm not wearing underwear today.
What?
Yeah.
You don't have to talk to me about that.
Well, I thought I want to talk to you about you, and I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how I feel about it.
Well,
I'm not super excited about it. This is not my choice.
Okay, so I guess we need to find out why you don't have underwear on.
Because
I remember, by the way, back on TV one time, you asked me on TV where I get my underwear. So
where do you?
I make my own.
Okay,
but what's up with the underwear thing?
So here's the situation, and the reality is that I kind of live in 2 places. I've got my home, where when I got my kids, we stay there, and when I don't have my kids, I usually stay at my girlfriend's house.
She doesn't come to your place?
No, she's not a big fan of my place.
Why is that?
Well,
Is it the renters?
No, it's not the renters. Our definitions of clean are different.
I think we've established that between the two of you.
You know what I mean? So it just saves us a lot of trouble if I stay at her house.
Gotcha. I'm okay.
And so right now, my clothes are split between 2 houses.
Uh-huh.
And so sometimes
you leave stuff?
I leave stuff, and sometimes I bring stuff. And when I got home, I was sure there was an extra pair of underwear in my drawers.
I feel like you need to invest in more pairs of underwear. That's what I feel like. If you have all of them at your girlfriend's house.
How many pairs of underwears do you have?
I don't know. I have a whole drawer full.
I bet I've got. Josh, how many pairs do you have? I don't know. More than 12?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think I probably got 8 or 9.
Okay. I think you need to double that. If you got 2 households, you're going back and forth.
18 pairs of underwear?
Well, one's for one house, one's for the other.
Oh.
Then you don't have to go commando on the show.
Yeah, and it's not fun. I mean, at first I thought, a lot of people go in commando like it's cool.
It's not cool.
It's not cool.
Do you have a zipper? Because that's a problem.
Yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the honesty, sort of.
Yeah, I thank you for listening. Yeah. Hey, today we got a great show for you. Sometimes the world sends you people at the right time. And we've been doing podcasts, and every once in a while somebody on Facebook will go, hey, you've got to talk to this guy. Well, I had 4 different people say, you've got to talk to this guy. And then this guy reached out to me. Of course, his name is Rod Gardner, DDS. Did I get that right, Rod?
Yes, thank you.
And Rod said, hey, look, I've been listening to your podcast, and if there's anything I can do to help out, I would love to. And I said, would you like to come on the show and share your story?
Well, off the air, a few weeks, several times over the last few weeks, you've mentioned how excited you are to try to get him on.
Because his story is amazing, and I know just a little bit of it, and I can't wait to hear the whole thing. But I'm going to give you the precursor. Was a dentist, lost his practice, went to jail for 13 months, got out, got his practice back, and is rock and rolling. Is that in a nutshell?
That's it. Yeah, that's about right.
But let's get started. How does the story of Rod begin?
Well, I got to be honest, I've got underwear on. Anyway.
That's generally a standard for the show, Rod, just so you know.
I'm going to slide over a bit.
This is, only Casey can get away with running commando.
So I grew up down here in Salt Lake, out in the Willow Creek area, and my dad was a dentist, so it's kind of in my blood. I've got 2 little sisters and 3 brothers. I'm the second oldest, and grew up in Willow Creek, basically walking out the back door to go golfing. And
for those who don't listen, we have a lot of listeners out of the state of Utah. I mean, it's a nice area.
Yeah.
It's up in a beautiful, right nestled next to the mountains. The golf course is right there. So, I mean, you were living a pretty good life.
Yeah, my life growing up was great. My parents both come from alcoholic families. Both of their fathers were alcoholics, and they basically, when my dad was 19 and my mom was 18, they got married and said, let's get out of here. And they were going to go do something different. And so...
Had they made the choice not to drink then?
Yeah.
Because of their experience growing up?
Yeah, they both hated it then and they hate it now. And so that shaped the path of their life. And they were going to take this family and basically go the opposite of the direction they were raised in. And
yeah, people in the recovery world would say they were going to break the cycle. They were going to break the chain.
They were going to break the chain, and I can see, as I look back, and now as I get older and I have my own kids and see, kind of evaluate my life and some of the things that I did and didn't do and continue to do, I can see how they were trying to just totally change from what they'd been raised in, and yet at the time it sometimes felt like they were trying to jam us into a hole that maybe we didn't quite fit in. So we grew up down here, and then, at a young age, I don't remember exactly when, probably around 12, I just felt a little anxious around in big groups, and I'm anxious today. It takes me a while to kind of
loosen up.
Yeah.
Doesn't help that Casey's not wearing drawers.
Yeah,
that'll throw you for a loop every time.
That jacked it up a notch, but so I was always just, I was athletic and all these, I guess, these things that at the time people looked at were kind of important. I was in scouts and was going to church, but I always felt this just underlying anxiety, especially around bigger groups. And it got to a point where I felt like maybe I was different. There was something not quite right with me. And I think from that time on, it kind of knocked at my self-esteem. And yet, life just went on,
That kind of anxiety makes a person really self-conscious. Would you
Exactly.
say you were really self-conscious in a sort of unhealthy way, worried about yourself all the time?
All the time. Always wondering what are people thinking of me, trying to present myself as what I maybe looked like, but not exactly how I felt on the inside.
And I got the sense from what you were saying that your parents had kind of rigid rules. You said they were kind of jamming you guys into would you say they were kind of rule followers, lots of rigidity?
Yeah, because that's what they, growing up, that's what they saw worked around them. They didn't want what was going on in their homes. So as they looked around, that's what they perceived was these people who do this, this, and this. Good things
Their lives
happen.
are good.
So they modeled that kind of approach.
And that the reason I bring that up is, and it sounds like you're aware of this, kids who grow up in homes with alcoholic parents will often go to one extreme or the other. Either they model that substance abuse and alcoholic chaotic sort of lifestyle, or they go swing to the other end of the spectrum, become fairly rigid and rule abiding because of the chaos that the alcoholism causes in the household and the inconsistencies, and sometimes there's food and sometimes there's not, and all those kinds of things that can be very traumatic for a kid. And so with both of your parents growing up in that household, and it sounds like them being on the same page, I wondered if their sort of rigidity affected you negatively because of your anxiety.
It may have, and I never was able to voice it, they weren't doing anything wrong. I just
Well, no, it's just a style, but
Yeah.
sometimes those styles don't mesh well for a young kid who's figuring out that he's got a lot of anxiety.
right. It's interesting. Part of that, my grandpa, on my dad's side, he would always smell like cigarettes and alcohol. And so I love the smell of a bar. And because I relate that to my grandpa, and he would, he was one of my biggest supporters in athletics and all these things.
Oh,
He was
okay.
just always there.
So those smells became associated with good things.
Those
for you.
smells are good to me, whereas my dad hates it.
Yeah.
And hates everything about it. And so, yeah, it's our life experiences that definitely shape the way that we
Interesting, yeah.
deal with things. But so when I was going into my freshman year, my parents, and at the time my older brother he was kind of going wayward, and they thought the answer was to move out of the Willow Creek area and head back home to where they both grew up, which is in Brigham City. So when my brother was a senior and I was going into my freshman year, they took us and we moved to Brigham City and became Box Elder Bees.
It's
And,
kind of a tough time to move, right? You guys probably had a friend group and all
yeah,
that
we had a
stuff.
friend group. For me, it wasn't as big of a deal, but I could see for my brother it could have been hard. But we both loved the outdoors and loved hunting and those types of things. And whenever we would go hunting, that's where we headed, was north, because Grandpa had a farm up there, and that's where we'd hunt. So for me, I think I was okay with it. We were going to be closer to the hunting, and eventually my older brother Darren came around, and so we moved to Brigham City, and sometime in that shift of leaving my old friends and finding new friends, and I found great friends. We're still friends to this day, but I was introduced to some things that...
Alcohol?
Yeah.
Marijuana?
Alcohol, marijuana. And initially, I was like, no way, I'm not doing any of that. I'll run with you guys, I'll hang with you, but I'm going to be the guy that, is the example.
I've got a friend who kind of talks about that, and he's like, you sit in a barbershop long enough, you'll get a haircut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
I got
mean,
a haircut.
There's a lot of guys who say they'll do that. Like, I'm going to go, and I'm not going to do it.
Right.
But chances are,
Eventually.
Yeah.
they'll
Wears you
get you.
down.
Yeah. So eventually I tried smoking marijuana, and I can remember right where we were exactly when I tried it, and within 10 minutes or 15 minutes I was so paranoid and anxious.
Oh, yeah.
It was like a full-on panic attack, and it was no more of that for me. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But I do remember some times where just trying to fit in, I would put it in my mouth, kind of suck in, but not
Pretend
inhale it.
you're-
Yeah. So
Bill Clinton it.
yeah, I was totally, totally Bill Clinton in it. But and then it was, and that social anxiety continued, even though I was doing all the things that normal kids do, and probably no one from the outside could have any clue that inside I was just like really uptight and uncomfortable.
And that was just the biology you inherited.
That's-
In
yeah.
fact, your grandfathers who had alcoholism may very well have felt the same when they were young, because we inherit predispositions towards depression or anxiety and those sorts of things. And, it's very frustrating. Like you said, you're doing all the right things. You're athletic, you're going to school, you're making friends, and it still doesn't touch it because it's a biological issue. And you're right. Unless you verbalize it, people from the outside, they would think you were doing great.
Right, no clue, and then they would actually think that I was something that I wasn't, because I was pretty quiet, and so I got that tag of, oh, he's stuck up or whatever. But really, it was because I'm scared to talk to you if I don't know you, and then my junior year, I had never tried alcohol, but my junior year in high school, I caved in and tried a couple beers, and instantly I thought I'd found the secret to the rest of my life. It felt like, okay, this is what's been missing. Now I can talk to this girl or these people, and I'm comfortable and I'm funny, and so that was the marijuana was a bad experience, which was a good thing, but the alcohol was a really good experience.
It's interesting with marijuana. What you had is what's called a paradoxical effect, where it kind of flips and has the opposite effect of what we would expect. For a lot of people, smoking marijuana will calm them down until it doesn't. And so people who smoked for long periods of time will have some of those paranoid experiences. And for you, you had it the first time, so that probably cured your desire to do it a whole lot after.
You're listening to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction, but more importantly about recovery. We're listening to Rod Gardner, DDS's story. He talked about the first time he tried marijuana, and then when he tried alcohol, what a difference it made in his young career. We're going to find out more about that in just a few seconds.
A gun in the face.
Then all of a sudden they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
Started 2 years of horror for an American in Venezuela.
They said, you need to give us your phone and get ready because you're coming with us.
I'm Becky Bruce, and I spent a year researching and piecing together Josh and Tammy Holt's story about their ordeal in a notorious prison.
That's when everything started to turn bad. We had another pound on the door. Boom, boom, boom. And there was the police once again.
You can binge all of the episodes of Hope in Darkness on KSLpodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, welcome back to Project Recovery. We're talking to Rod Gardner, DDS. He talked about the first time he had marijuana and had a bad effect on it and swore it off to no more. And then he said he tried alcohol and he felt like his life changed and he just figured out the answer to the rest of his life. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What does DDS stand for?
Let's just leave that DDS off.
Dental.
You just like to say it, so I wondered if
Well, it was at the end of his name in the text.
It's cool, and it rolls off the tongue.
What is it?
Doctor of Dental Surgery.
Yeah. So he's a DDS. And
Yeah,
so when you
that's
tried
good.
alcohol, you felt like your problems had been answered.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and it's not like it's something I jumped into every weekend, but it was kind of a tool in my toolkit that I knew, okay, if I'm feeling that way, if I'm in a big group, then drink 2 or 3 beers and everything will be fine. And by no means throughout my high school time did I start drinking every weekend. That just wasn't in the cards. There was too much else going on in my life, but we would drink every now and again, and I always enjoyed it.
And you kept that going, and you ended up graduating high school. Box Elder B, you said.
Yeah.
And then you went on to university up at Utah State.
Utah State, yep. And went up there for, it would have been 1 quarter back then. And then after that first quarter, I went on a mission. Went to Philadelphia on my mission.
The city of brotherly love.
It was. And I was excited to go there because I loved Rocky. And
Did you run up the stairs?
I did, yeah, a number of times.
Got to run up the stairs, right?
Yeah. But before I went on my mission, I just need to jump back to high school real quick. It was after a football game one time when a buddy of mine called me because his mom had given him this pill because he'd gotten hurt in the game. And he's like, dude, you got to come up. So I went to his house, and he gave me a Percocet. And
He wanted you to come just try it, just
it.
recreationally.
Yeah. Just we're having
Just
fun,
for fun.
right?
Yeah.
And I tried that Percocet, and it was the same thing as the alcohol, but it was even better because no one knew I took it.
You can't smell Percocet.
Can't smell it. And so that was another thing stuck in my mind. Okay, I've got, if I'm anxious, if I'm uptight, if there's a situation I can't deal with, I've got beer. But now I've got something even better, if I can get my hands on them, is a pill.
You're filling up your toolbox.
Right, to deal with my problems.
How about your friends in high school? Did you see any friends struggle, have problems because of substance use?
Not really. There was 1 or 2 guys who really got into the marijuana, and I think ended up maybe getting kicked off a baseball team, or and there was a group of guys that broke training, is what the coach called it, and he kicked them all off of the team. But it wasn't like my close-knit group of friends. I ran around with a group that was all athletes. Most of them were really straight arrows, and then there was 3 or 4 like me who would dabble here and there, and then there's 1 or 2 who really got into it, you know.
And I think that's pretty similar to my high school experience too. I mean,
For most people, probably.
And back then in high school, the big trouble you could get in was from someone's parents, a coach, or a school. I mean, because like we've had some people that got really into it hard in high school. But for the most part, you're just dabbling in it and you're trying to figure out your way through life. And so it wasn't until you had the beer and you're like, okay, this can help me in social situations. And then you took a Percocet. And so now you've got 2 tools in your tool belt.
Was it just the one Percocet in high school? Just the one time?
I think so, yeah, as far as I can remember. Yeah. Do you want to hear the marijuana in the greenhouse?
Yes.
Story? Okay. When I can't remember if it was my junior year or my senior year, but one of the guys had some marijuana seeds. And he brought them to school, and we all had a greenhouse class together. And we thought...
At school?
At school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we thought, we'll plant these seeds and and see what happens. And so we planted them in with our tomato flats.
Sure, that makes sense.
And to our surprise, they started to grow.
Yeah.
And there was 4 of us who knew about this. You know, the rest of the class didn't know, and of course the teacher didn't know. And then... the plants were getting too big, so we transferred them to hanging plants so they were kind of out of the way, and they continued to grow and get bigger. And then this poor ag teacher trusted us with the key to the greenhouse on the weekends so that we could go in and water it. 'Cause,
your tomatoes.
Yeah, well, the whole thing. The whole place needed to be watered. It wasn't automatic like it is now, so... We had the keys to the greenhouse, and we took a portable TV in there and some lawn chairs, and on the weekends we'd go in there and hang out and eat pizza and water our plants.
Oh, water your plants. Okay.
But then one day we came to class, and there was 2 policemen waiting there. And one of the 4 of us had gotten nervous and
ratted you out.
Ratted us out, spilled the beans to the teacher, and...
Do you think the teacher had any idea what was growing there?
No clue. No, zero clue.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of people, I mean, maybe an ag teacher would be different, but a lot of people, even today, may not really know what a marijuana plant looks like.
We had it planted in with another pot.
So even harder
big,
to tell.
And so it's mixed in there, but they were getting to be pretty good sized. And certainly in my mind, I wasn't thinking, we're going to grow these, we're going to smoke them and all that. And I don't think that was in anybody's minds, really. We just were being funny. And
it's kind of a little act of rebellion.
Yeah, right? Planted these seeds, and then...
A story to tell 20 years later. Remember when we planted weed in the greenhouse?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
So what happened with the police officers?
You know, that's where I guess... I don't know, my memory gets a little foggy, but I know that me and one of the other kids, we got a talking to. I was on the tennis team at the time, and we basically got a talking to. But a couple of the other guys had more drastic consequences. And yeah, it's one of those small town
not
privilege
nowadays.
things.
Yeah, I was going to say, back in the day in a small town, you got a talking to, but nowadays you'd have been arrested, I'm sure.
So last time we talked, in the story, you were just leaving on your mission. You went to Philadelphia.
Yep.
And you served 2 years?
I was a year and a half. I was back in the 18-month days.
And then you came back and...
Went back to Utah State. And
now, can I ask, on the mission, were there any temptations to use drugs, alcohol, anything like that?
Yeah. I as I've reflected back on my life, I see a lot of the times when I turned to it. And I didn't know if this was going to come up today, but since you asked, in high school, playing football, I got kicked in the groin, and I had a pretty serious issue, but I, of course, didn't want to tell anybody about it. And then on my mission, I had this varicose veins,
right,
and
that had been created by the injury.
Exactly, yeah. But on my mission, I decided to go to a doctor and get it checked out. And I ended up getting a surgery on my mission. And I got a prescription for Tylox. It's crazy I can remember that all these years later, but it was Tylenol with oxycodone maybe.
Oh, yeah.
It's an older drug, but
Right.
I took those, plowed through them, and then I remember going and refilling it again. And as I look back, I don't think that this was something that was really bothering me on my mission. I think that I thought, hey, this is a way to escape for a while. But
And the mission might have been full of anxiety because of having to go out and contact people maybe and talk to the groups, or was that not a trigger?
No, I was good in that setting because it's just what you do.
You knew the material. You
I knew
believe.
the material and
kind of playing a role maybe.
Yeah. And I was a straight down the line missionary, but I can look back and see how, gosh, I think I did that just hoping that I'd get some medication for it. So, yeah, I came home. I went back to Utah State, and within a couple of years, I met my wife-to-be, and we started dating, and within a month, she was pregnant. We got married within 4 months of meeting and had our first son. And then I was talking to my dad one day. Didn't know what I was going to do with my life. You know, I thought of being a school teacher, maybe like a wildlife agent. And my dad said, you know, you ought to look into dental school. And I looked into it, and I just ran with it. And I started studying hard and really hit the books hard for a couple of years and applied and got in. And then in 1990, headed out to Virginia for dental school.
So in 1990, heading to dental school, how many kids did you have? Still just one?
Just one, Tyson, yeah.
And you and your wife and Tyson headed to Virginia?
Headed to Richmond, Virginia, and went out there and did 4 years. And my last year in dental school, I had this anxiety come back that I'd had with the marijuana, and I didn't know where it was coming from. I'm like, well, I haven't smoked any marijuana, so why am I feeling this? But I started having this panic feeling when I was at school, and that didn't work out very well, because then I felt like, gosh, I can't go to school if I'm going to feel this way. And I remember one day actually calling my wife and saying, I don't know what's going on with me, but I don't even want to drive home. You need to come and get me. And she came and got me, and the people at the school, I kind of told them what was going on, and I was a good student and doing well, and they were good enough to say, hey, Rod, you just take a couple weeks off. And I went to a doctor, and the guy prescribed me some Xanax. And the Xanax helped me calm down, helped me sleep, and got back into school and graduated.
And that was back then the typical response. Most doctors would prescribe a benzodiazepine like Xanax in the 90s for a panic attack. And it does kind of hit you quick and makes you calm down. But unfortunately, we know now it doesn't really do anything to end a person's cycle of panic attacks, which is fairly common in adulthood, especially when you're under prolonged stress. So even though you're doing well in dental school, I'm sure just like any graduate student, every day is, it's stress.
Pushing to graduate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and after that we moved home. My dad had a practice in Brigham City, and then he had a little satellite office out in Tremonton, and he basically turned the Tremonton office over to me. So we moved out to Garland, and I started practicing in 94.
And at that point, were you just using the Xanax in time of crisis? And so it was just when directed, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And more and more, I think I was using it at night just to get some sleep. I've never been a great sleeper, and I found that this Xanax, man, it can
just calm the noises and the voices in your head, and just help you get a good night's sleep.
Yep.
But just like opioids, you build a tolerance to benzos. And so did that start to happen where it didn't quite have the same effect over time and you needed more?
Yeah, I think it probably did. I don't remember, for a few years, I think I just kind of used it
as directed.
maybe a little more than that, but I don't remember having problems getting refills or anything. I think I was pretty close to using it as directed.
You're listening to Project Recovery. We're talking to Rod Gardner, DDS, Doctor of
Dental
Science.
Surgery.
Dang it.
It's close. You're close.
Coming up on part 2 of this podcast, we're going to hear where it all goes wrong and how he gets back on track. You're listening to Project Recovery.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.
I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. Don't miss Cold's new Season 3, where I look into the unsolved disappearance of Cherie Warren, a woman last seen leaving her job at a Salt Lake City office in 1985. Police cast suspicion on Cherie's estranged husband and boyfriend, but never made any arrests or recovered Cherie's remains. Find Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie, anywhere you get your podcasts.